All right, so let's get started with the French and Indian War. Okay, what's the other name for the French and Indian War?
7 Years' War.
7 Years' War, okay? When we talk about Europe and the rest of the world, we call it the 7 Years' War. When we talk about the United States, most Americans, through most of American history, call it the French and Indian War. But be aware on the test, they're the same war. They're not different wars, they're the same, okay? All right, Eric, start me off. What is this painting showing us?
Okay, so it's showing General Braddock and General Washington when they were trying to invade Fort Duquesne, right?
Okay, Duquesne, that's how you're supposed to say
Duquesne.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Braddock got shot and he's on the ground, and it shows Washington like grieving, I guess.
Okay. All right. And this is right before Washington's going to take control of the army, and he's going to lead them to a noble victory, taking over the fort, right?
Yeah, no, he runs away.
Yeah, there you go. He retreats. All right. So, yeah, Washington's most famous first two battles are both retreats, right? He has to retreat from Fort Necessity, loses that fort, and then retreats from Fort Duquesne as well, right? The war continues on, and Washington does get some victories, and the British have their biggest victory with the Navy coming in here and taking over Montreal. Okay, so the Treaty of Paris, excuse me, the Treaty of Paris, 1763. This is and you have to use the date, okay, because there's like 20 treaties of Paris, so you have to. Paris has a lot of treaty rooms, has a lot of big fancy rooms, so they sign a lot of treaties there. Okay. So Treaty of Paris, 1763, this ends the 7 Years' War. It ends the French and Indian War. And the British, it's basically a tie. The British and the French, the British kind of mostly win, but it's kind of a tie. So the British gain Canada. Okay, so the British are going to gain a bunch of territory. So the British gain Canada and Florida in there. Okay, the Frenchies gain some of the islands in the Caribbean. And the Frenchies actually are okay getting those islands in the Caribbean. It's like Martinique and a couple of other ones, because those tiny little islands grow so much sugar and make so much molasses that the tiny little island in the Caribbean makes more money than all of Canada. Okay, so the French actually the French feel pretty neutral about this. Okay, so the biggest thing that we need to pay attention to, though, is at the end of this war, the British have crushing debt. Okay, crushing massive debt. The British have incurred an amount of debt worth about 3 times what its normal budget was, right? So they have a lot of debt. It's the most debt the British have ever been in, because fighting a war. Because they fight the war in India, they fight the war in Africa, they fight it in the Middle East, they fight it in Europe, and they fight it in North America, right? That's why we call this the First World War oftentimes. The other part of this is that the British established a permanent base of soldiers in America for the first time. They're going to get a standing army of soldiers in America for the first time. Okay? Now, if the British and the French are both kind of winners, right? The British are more winner, but the French are the next. Who's the loser? Anika, who's the loser here?
The colonists.
No, the colonists are British.
Oh, the natives?
The natives. Yeah, you need to put in there that the clear loser of this war is the natives. Why, Shivani, why are the natives such losers in this war?
Because they're losing land, probably.
Well, they are going to lose land, but they're losing something more valuable than land. What else are they going to lose? Eric? Who's Zarin? I don't know who Zarin is. Who's that?
Oh, Zarin Cambry? Is that it?
I don't know. Zarin, who are you?
Oh, they're in here.
Zarin? Zarin going once? Zarin going twice?
Hi, sorry.
Hi. I don't think I know who you are.
I'm one of your online students.
Oh, you're one of my online students? You're taking regular U.S. history?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the AP U.S. history class. Yeah. So my regular online U.S. history, we meet on B days. We have a morning. We meet in the we meet at 9:40 in the morning on B days, and we meet at 1:10 on B days. So
Okay.
today's an A day, so that's you're in the right link, you're in the right place, but it's wrong class.
Okay. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Sorry. You're welcome to stay, but it won't help you because your class is doing the progressive era and this is the revolutionary era. So, okay. All right. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. See you tomorrow. All right. I'll see you there. Okay. I recognize the name on paper, but I had never met that person before. So, all right. Oh, the big losers. The big losers of the war are the Native Americans by far. So that brings us into our next big letter F. Is that right? Is that right? F, E, X.
It's
Y.
D.
B? B like boy?
Is it F? I thought it was D.
I think
D
it's
like D like dog.
Dog? All right. Big number delta.
Yeah.
Delta, delta, delta. All right. Pontiac's rebellion. You can also call it Pontiac's war. Pontiac's war or Pontiac's rebellion. All right. At the end of the French and Indian War, the natives are terrified. The natives are terrified because things are going to go very, very bad for them. Okay, they're going to lose land, but what's more important? What are they going to lose that's more important than land?
Lives.
Yeah, lives, but what else? There's something else. The root is in the difference between the French and the British. What are the Indians going to lose?
Religion?
No. They're losing their ally, right? How do the French treat natives versus
Nice.
how do the British treat natives? Right? The French are generally pretty relatively friendly, right? They like to do business with the natives. They have a relatively friendly alliance with the natives. And how do the British treat the natives, generally speaking? Quite bad, quite badly, right? The natives aren't stupid. They realize that this is going to happen, right? They look at this and they right away they're like, oh dang, we just lost our closest friends. We're in big trouble. This is going to be a real problem, right? So Pontiac is the name of a native leader. We don't have a real good picture of him. We have kind of racist caricatures of him. So we're just going to leave those somewhere else. We don't need them, right? Pontiac is the name of a leader, and he comes from the Ottawa tribe. Sometimes you spell Ottawa as Ottawa, O-T-T-O-W-A, or O-T-T-A-W-A, I mean, like the capital of Canada, right? It's the same tribe. So Pontiac is the leader of this tribe, and they get all of these other tribes together to unify together. You don't really need all of the names of the tribes. What you do need to have here is that they're all the Great Lakes tribes. Okay, so these are the tribes from like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Ontario, the Canada side. Okay, and all of these tribes are unified together and they go into a war immediately. Okay, now there are white settlers, there are British settlers already moving into this area. They're moving into Ohio, they're moving into Western Pennsylvania, they're already moving into what is today Michigan. And the natives look at this and they say, oh crap, we have a real problem, okay? What you need in this war is a really nasty war, okay? It's a nasty war, and this is what we would call the first example of a genocide war. This is our first big example of a genocidal war. Shivani, what do I mean when I say a genocidal war? What does that mean?
They get wiped out, basically, like a whole ethnicity, I think.
Okay.
Wait, no, that's ethnic genocide.
Yeah. So, so a genocide Yeah, a genocide is where you are trying to destroy an entire culture or an entire a culture, ethnicity, language, or religion, where you're trying to kill every single person. Okay. This war, the natives are trying to do genocide against the English, and the English are trying to do genocide against the natives. Okay. So on the native side, on both sides, both sides for the first time start regularly attacking women and children. So there's a bunch of these battles where the native tribes would arrive at a white settlement and they would raid a schoolhouse and kill the teacher and the children in the schoolhouse. We have a bunch of examples of that. Or they would raid a white settlement in the middle of the night and start murdering everybody in their sleep, including women and children. Okay. Europeans generally had a lot of rules about war, right? Europeans, like, they all line up together, they have their bugle, they like take lunch breaks and stuff, right? Europeans have all these like war in Europe is real strange. It's really, really weird. It's more like a sporting match than a war, right? But war in America is this weird thing with no rules. Okay. The whites start doing the same thing. They start entering into tribal villages and just wiping out the entire population. In fact, this is the first time that we have instances where both the natives and the whites are targeting women and children. You're not just killing women because they're there, you're seeking them out and targeting them. Okay? The key for a genocide is you have to kill the women. Right? Why do you have to kill the women?
No babies.
Yeah. Without the women, if you kill all the women, if your tribe is only 100 men, then it doesn't matter what happens because your tribe is dead. Right? So, so they start targeting the women. They start targeting the children. And when you study other genocides in history, you're going to see that that's the case too. Okay. This is also the first example of Americans trying to use biological warfare. The Americans used smallpox blankets, like handkerchiefs and blankets that are wrapped around smallpox patients who have it, and then they give the blankets to natives. They have some seemingly friendly whites give them to seemingly friendly Indians in order to try to spread smallpox around. We are not 100% sure that the blankets worked. We don't know that the blankets worked, but what we do know is that smallpox did hit all of the tribes during this time period. But smallpox was already spreading during this time period, so it's not totally clear whether or not the blankets worked or not. But what is absolutely clear is that the Army ordered the blankets to be sent out. The Army did order that out, and the Army knowingly knew what they were doing when they did it. Okay, so this is the first time of attempted biological warfare. Now, the natives take over Fort Detroit, which is Detroit. Americans would call it Detroit, like Detroit, Michigan. Okay, today it's Detroit, but the French way to say it is Detroit. And so the natives take over Fort Detroit. The Frenchies who are there abandon it and leave the natives there. The Americans have to siege the fort. It turns into a nasty, nasty battle, really, really bloody battle. They actually fight over all sorts of forts all over the area. Okay, the Brits have to send more troops in. So we have American troops, we have British troops. At this point, remember, Americans are British, right? So they're sending English troops from England in addition to the English troops from the colonies fighting. Okay. The war results in this, the Proclamation Line of 1763. This is the ending result. So King George III dictates this line here. And he says that all along this line, no colonists can go past this line. This is the line of proclamation. And he says no colonists can go into this area at all. This area is reserved for natives. Now, we have some problems here. What do you anticipate is going to be the problem? Eric, what do you anticipate to be the problem here? There's two big problems.
Are going to move into the new world and they're not going to have enough land.
Okay, so you think that this is going to get too full?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a long ways away, so that's not going to happen yet. That's not our immediate problem. Okay, well, what's our immediate, there's a more immediate problem. Shivani or Anika, either of you? Or Eric, any of you can chime in.
Was it that they were already on the other side?
There you go. Problem number one, the Americans are already living over here, right? This whole area is already filled with Americans. American settlers all throughout this whole area. Okay, so problem number one, the proclamation line doesn't recognize the reality of the situation. Americans are already living there. That's problem number one. Problem number two, what's our next problem?
Was it that they couldn't get back over because of the Appalachians? Is that where the Appalachians were? Okay.
This one has to do with attitudes. Are the Americans really eager to listen to the British in London? Why not? Anika, you're shaking your head.
Yeah.
You're correct. Why are you correct?
Or like, I was gonna say that this could have been like one of the first things that King George did that the colonists like didn't like at all because they felt it was like tyrannical. Like, he's not letting us move in. That's so rude of him. Like,
right. Exactly. Exactly. I'm not sure how many of the colonies were saying that's so rude, but you get the idea. You get the idea. The colonists are already looking at this and they're already saying, God has blessed us with this land. This is our land. We're already moving out here. And now this crazy dude back in London wants to keep us here, right? This is where we're going to get people like Ben Franklin and stuff who will make an argument and say, look, you can't control us. You live on the other side of the world. You don't even know what's going on out here, right? This is going to start a long history, a long chain of Americans not wanting to listen to the Brits. As it turns out, Americans are not very good at doing what we're told, as it turns out. Okay, all right, big number E, echo. Oh, we're gonna skip that. All right, big number E stands for the Sugar Act. All right, you guys know what molasses is? Okay, this is molasses right here, okay? It's like a really, really thick, sugary syrup, okay? What is molasses used for?
Cooking, baking, right?
What are you baking?
Anything, isn't molasses used in caramel stuff?
Okay, yeah. You can actually use it, at this time period, molasses is the primary way that people consume sugar, right? So having like white ground up sugar wasn't the normal way to consume sugar at this time. At this time, it was this syrup. And so you would like, pour some of the syrup into your tea or into your coffee or something like that. Or you pour it into like, dough or something you're making, like a cake or something like that, right? Molasses is also important because it's the primary ingredient in rum. All right, so the Sugar Act is passed to raise the tax on molasses from 6 cents down to 3 cents. They're raising the tax from 6 cents to 3 cents.
Isn't that going down, or am I just dumb?
No, they're raising the tax. It was at 6 cents, and then they raised it to 3 cents. Right? They're raising it by negative 3 cents. Okay? The Americans flip out. The Americans are like, what the hell? Why are you charging us so much? Why did you raise our taxes negative 3 cents? What the hell? Right? The Americans go flip out about this. Do you have questions about this? You should have questions. Okay, the first question, of course,
I'm very confused.
Yeah.
I thought I was just dumb and I
too.
was missing a point or something, and I was like, wait a minute.
No,
I was
it's correct.
lost.
Yeah, no,
Or it just looked like you understood it, and I was like, okay, I'm missing something.
yeah, no, of course, I phrased it in a confusing way on purpose, right, to be funny. So they did raise the tax from 6 to 3. The difference is that they almost never actually enforced the 6 cents tax, right? So it was 6 cents that you almost never had to pay, and now it's 3 cents that you always have to pay every time. Does that make sense? Like what a lot of Americans were doing, because remember these, like the royal officials who are here are pretty corrupt, right? So the royal official will look at this and they'll say, oh, you owe me 6 cents. And then I'll say, look, I'll pay you 2 cents, and you look the other way. And then the official puts it in his pocket and walks away, right? He'd rather take the 2 cents himself than the 6 cents for the king, right? And so very few Americans were actually paying this tax, very few. So now the Americans are really pissed. The key here is that this bill is actually an anti-smuggling bill. America has become the center of global smuggling. We are getting ship after ship after ship filled with illegal molasses, illegal sugar, illegal all sorts of stuff, right? Illegal tea, illegal coffee, illegal like all sorts of food, like clothing, textiles, paper, right? All sorts of stuff. America is smuggling everything. This is the time of pirates. This is the Pirates of the Caribbean time. Okay, like Blackbeard the pirate and stuff, that's going on right now at this time period. Okay, and most of those pirates are American. Freedom Eagle, baby. Right? The Americans are really, really upset because the British are trying to stomp on our ability to smuggle food, to smuggle stuff, right? So the Americans are actually really quite upset because the British are trying to stop our illegal smuggling. Now, on the American side of it, or let's look at the British side. What's the British argument here?
We're losing money.
Okay, the British are losing money. What else? What's the other part of the British argument? Is smuggling legal? By definition, smuggling is not legal. The British are like, we're losing money and you are criminal. You are a criminal. You are breaking the law. You are smuggling. You are a criminal. And we just paid for this big giant war that you started, right? George Washington started the war. And the British are like, dude, you guys started the war. We had to pay for this entire war. And we had to pay for the entire Pontiac War afterwards that you guys were getting your butts handed to you. Not only we had to pay for 2 wars to defend you, and you are a criminal. That's the British argument. What's the American argument?
It's our divine right to smuggle.
Maybe not divine right, but it's our right to smuggle. Our argument is we really want to. That's our argument. We like it. We like smuggling things. We like it. That's, it's amazing how much of the American Revolution is kind of centered around our right to do criminal stuff. It's kind of funny, right? And the American argument here is, it's our right to do this and we like it. Okay, let's go to big number F. Big number F, the Stamp Act. Ooh, the tyrant King George. That tyrant. All right, so the Stamp Act, 1765. England passes the Stamp Act, which means that all paper goods have to have this official stamp right here. All paper goods have to have this official stamp on it, where you have to pay like 1 cent tax on the paper stuff. Now, the United States doesn't have any paper mills. We don't have any paper mills. This is the stamp. This is an American stamp mocking the Stamp Act. This is our protest stamp, that we started protest stamping our own stuff as a screw you, England. Okay. So we don't have any paper mills of our own. So all of our paper goods have to come from England. So it's stuff like legal documents, like business documents, legal documents, like who owns things, stuff like that. And one really, really controversial one is playing cards. That it sounds silly, but it's not. The Americans love to gamble. We are gambling kings at this time period, right? We're drinking our smuggled rum and we are gambling all day and all night. Welcome to America. Okay. Americans are super, super angry about this. And this is where we're going to enter in our next founding father. Okay. Founding fathers, they get special letters, right? They get their special coloring because they've earned the special coloring. All right, John Adams right here. John Adams, our founding father. Let's better know a founding father. All right, so who's this John Adams guy? All right, what do you guys know from him on your big six? Go, Shivani, what you got?
He just opposed the Stamp Act and he was the second president. Wait, yeah.
Okay. All right. So John Adams, first of all, he's coming from one of the richest, most political families in all of America. Okay. He comes from the Adams family. Da, 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 da. All right. So he's coming from the Adams family, which is one of the richest, most political families in all of America. The family is going to produce like 12 different politicians, right? And so Adams is going to become the most famous member of the most famous family. His wife is also from the second most famous family, the Quincy family, right? So he is the most famous member of the most powerful family, marrying the daughter of the most famous, powerful member of the second most powerful family, right? So Abigail Quincy becomes Abigail Quincy Adams. So this is a powerful political family, okay? John and Abigail. John is also a super brilliant lawyer. He might be the smartest lawyer in the entire continent. He goes to Harvard when he's 15 years old. He graduates from Harvard with a law degree by the time he's 19. Yeah. Let you guys know if you feel like you're a little bit behind the curve, right? John Adams was already working on his law degree by now. Thank you very much. So yeah, he gets his law degree from Harvard by the time he's 19, and he starts to practice law. When the Stamp Act comes out, John Adams becomes the loudest opponent to the Stamp Act. He's up in Boston, and he starts to publish articles about the Stamp Act, about how the Stamp Act is a violation of our freedoms and how it's not fair. And this is where Adams is going to come up with one of his most famous quotes, one of the most American things that you're ever going to hear: no taxation without representation. No taxation without representation. This is Adams' quote. He makes an argument that in England, English people have to pay taxes on all sorts of stuff. But that's fair because English people also have a seat in the parliament. So the English people can make their own laws. Americans have no seat in the parliament. There are no colonial seats in parliament. And John Adams makes an argument and he says, you cannot tax us legally unless you give us representation in parliament. Either we're British citizens or we're not British citizens. And if we're equals, if we're citizens, then we're equals. And if we're equals, we get representation. This is the argument he makes, right? This argument becomes very, very popular. Americans love this argument because it's fair. It's a pretty fair argument, right? What is London going to think about this argument? Shivani, what do you expect London to do with this argument?
They're probably going to ignore it.
Okay. They're largely going to ignore it. They actually come back and they say, okay, we'll give you representation. Maybe we'll have like one seat for all of the colonies. Right? Adams chimes back in and he says, hold on a minute. Why is it that Manchester has 10 seats and Manchester has the same population as the colonies do? Why don't we get 10 seats? Right? He also makes the argument, he says, in case you couldn't count, there's 13 of us over here. Why doesn't every colony get a seat? 13 seats, 13 colonies, 13 seats, right? And then he also makes the argument, look, if the colonies get a bigger population, then we need a bigger representation. The people back in London recognize this really quickly, though. America is really big, right? England, if you were to take into England and drop it onto America, it would be about this big, right? That's a problem for them, because if we're 10 times as big, then pretty soon we'll have 10 times as many votes, right? So London says, London rejects this, okay? John Adams is going to become very famous for arguing against the Stamp Act. This is going to rise him up to like celebrity status within the colonies. This is going to cause a bigger problem. Next, F, big number F. F, the Townshend Acts.
It's G.
G, sure, G. Big number G, the Townshend Acts. All right, so the Townshend Acts are a series of acts that are passed as a direct response to the Americans rebelling against the Stamp Act. I only have just a couple minutes before I have to go. I'm subbing for another teacher. But it basically counts for a tax on everything coming from England, clothing, paper, furniture, metal, like tools, everything, okay? It also stops the smuggling. So the British are gonna send a ton of ships out here, and they're also going to set up, this is the part that pisses people off the most, a board of customs at every single port. This means that at every single port in America, the ship has to arrive at the port, go to the board of customs, where the British search the ship to make sure that it's legal, make sure that they paid their taxes and stuff, and then lets the ship dock. This is going to be a real problem. We're going to leave it here because the British capture the ship Liberty. It's a smuggling ship owned by one John Hancock. All right, I have to go substitute for another teacher. He's leaving for the football game. So I have to go sub for his class right now. Okay. Eric, you and I were going to meet after the Zoom meeting, but I don't have a choice. I have to go sub. So Eric, you and I can meet sometime soon or something like that. Yeah, maybe we can do an individual Zoom or something like that. Do you come into school at all, or are you?
I come in after school on B days.
Okay,
Well,
maybe. Why don't you stop by my room tomorrow after school? Are you going to be here tomorrow on B day?
Yeah.
Okay, my room is C222.
Okay. I'll write that down.
All right, just stop by my room tomorrow after school. Okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing. I'm also going to stop recording. If I could figure out how to stop recording.